Yeah, I agree. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 2023 Logan Writers Festival interviews. Craig Ford is with me today, and we will be talking. And I think this is really pertinent, actually, especially with the Optus breach and all the things that happened this year that were huge tech issues for so many different people, and our landscape becoming so much more digital and global. All the scams coming through. We're talking about cybersecurity. And we're talking about Craig's books and how we can keep each other safe as authors who, in Australia especially, we have a very digital landscape that we need to be part of. So, how do you keep yourself safe? And what do you do to make sure your friends stay safe? So, Craig, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, thank you. So, give me the titles of the books that you have written so far.
Okay, so I have three series. So the first one is a Hacker I Am series, which is around a sort of cyber security, cyber education series, which has two books in it. So the Hacker I Am and a Hacker I Am Volume 2. And then I created a cyberpunk, I guess you'd say hacker fantasy series, which starts with the book Foresight, which has a second edition coming out this month on the 27th, which is very exciting. um, and it's called Shadow. So it's a sort of follows a journey of a young female character, sort of her journey as a hacker and sort of choosing, making that sort of choice on the good side or the bad side, or on that sort of hacker world, I guess you would say. And then I've got the more recent one, which I am a co-author on with Katie Randall, which is The Shadow World, which is a primary school kids cyber awareness book, which comes out next month, which is also very exciting. I think it's a sort of an area, particularly that younger cyber awareness and education we don't really cover very well, and we don't really get too much out there. So I think that's going to be a very exciting book.
Yeah, I think with kids, we'll go backwards from what you've just said because you've given me so many things that I want to talk about already. Um, but with kids, it's nearly like the old sex education stuff where it was only abstinence. That was it. You didn't do it, and that was the only education you got. So, of course, you had this huge influx of STIs and you had teenage pregnancy and people not knowing what periods are or what hair is meant to be growing where. And you had a huge portion of the generation that didn't know anything about it. I think it's the same with cybersecurity. Kids are just told, well, don't go on that site. Like, don't go on the internet and you'll be safe, or don't do this. This abstinence mentality for our kids when it comes to their safety and their security online doesn't. It's not effective. It's not effective because they don't understand the risks. They don't understand what's happening, and even if they do, they're like, oh well, it won't happen to me.
You're very much right on there, and particularly around that sort of, even organizations are the same thing. Like, it won't happen to me, we're not going to get hacked. But
Oh.
as in my sort of day job in the cybersecurity world, I pretty much indicate to everyone it's when, not if.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much going to happen to everyone. But around the education side of things, we have, I'd say, probably for the last 10 years, sort of done most of the cyber awareness and education for people in their employment, in their jobs, in their sort of day environments, which is way too late because you've already got ingrained skills, and your habits are already sort of inset. But with the kids' education, the sort of the way we approach it is the opposite way to what we sort of been looking at it now. We're actually going, do this. We know you're going to be already using it. You look at kids in kindergarten and prep; they're already using iPads and tablets, and
Mm-hmm.
that's, as a ethical hacker and security professional, that scares the hell out of me. Um, but opening up to some of those threats, it's more about, yes, we know they're going to be on it. We can't control the fact that they're going to be on it or not. They just are. We just need to give them the information and the knowledge that can make them safer when they are, and know to go, hey, hang on, I need to put my hand up and go, that doesn't look quite right. Can somebody help me? And have that confidence to go, I'm not going to get in super trouble for this. You know, let's go talk to a trusted adult, someone you know you're comfortable talking to, and go, look, this is what's happened. I've clicked on this thing, or someone's contacted me. I don't know who they are. I don't know what to do, and really give it real education, not scare tactics. Scare tactics don't work. It needs to be around confidence and being a bit more comfortable, going, hey, this is something that's going to happen, something we're seeing all the time. Admittedly, in that book, for the age group, sort of that 8 to 12, we do dive into a few. topics that are probably a little scary for the kids around sort of that child protection stuff and
Yeah,
meeting people
yeah,
online. And we need to do that, but we do it in a way that's, I guess, as easy as you can and make some of the topics a bit more fun. And we use the stories to do the education piece. So I think I think the way we do it is sort of using that education and using it a bit more fun and a bit more entertaining and using it as an education, not a, you can't do that or you can't go here because we know they're going to. But
yeah. Hello. Oh, it's so important to, I think, with child safety in particular, whenever I hear anyone under the age of 18 saying that they want to be an influencer or they want to make video games on YouTube, or even the ones that are just in an artistic sphere and that need to put themselves out there in order to garner the trust, to build their audience, and to make those steps through from obscurity to success, those steps need to be guarded. It's so dangerous to have personal details out there. I've had, I think I've had 3 stalkers, and 2 of them were people that I knew, but they used my details online to find out where I lived, to find out who I was interacting with, and where I worked, and they were actually dangerous. But and the other side of it is prevention. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, because until they did anything, the police couldn't do anything. And the DVAs they weren't worth the paper that they were written on. So to know how to protect yourself, to know how to hide the details and the data and what steps are necessary is what the community is all about. We're about sharing this to keep each other safe. One of our authors last year, we had to take down several videos of and make sure she wasn't in any of the photos because she had an old stalker that had re-emerged. And some of these people are innocuous. Some of them are just a bit bizarre, but some of them are genuinely dangerous. And for kids in particular, there is nothing more terrifying as an aunt or I'm an aunt. So I'm not a mum yet, but when I see their parents and how they guard what they do online, it's entirely justified as far as I'm concerned.
no, I agree. I think you've got to have that sort of at least understand what they're doing online and what they're sharing and understand. But you're right around what we share. Being a security person, I'm very sort of torn between what I share and what I don't. And to get the books and the knowledge and everything out there, I have to put myself out there to a point to get the sort of audience and build that sort of thing. But it's the security professionals inside screaming, going, "Don't put anything there. Don't share a thing."
Yeah.
But it's finding that sort of right balance. But most people don't understand sort of pretty much whatever you share on social media or online pretty much is there permanently. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you do, you can delete things, but most of the time they're still accessible if you know how to find them.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing I sort of have a lot of conversations around is particularly the influencer sort of space and building that profile. They'll talk about their special events like their birthdays and going to events and things like that. You're telling people where you are, what you're doing. You're giving away, sometimes if you aren't turning the metadata off inside your pictures, you're giving them the actual GPS locations of where you are when you take photos,
Yep.
which is quite scary. The bonus is some of the platforms are actually stripping that information out now when you post things, which I think is a great move. It actually
Mm-hmm.
helps keep people a little bit safer. But yeah, the amount of content and the photos and things like that, I think it's oversharing a lot of the time.
Oh,
Share what
yes.
you need to, yes, build your profile, do YouTube videos on music or writing or conversations or whatever you want to do, but just think about it before you post them going, is there something in this that, is there a label in the background with your address on it? Or I see a lot of writers when they open up their first box of books the first time they get it and there's their address label sitting on the top
Oh,
with their name and you're like going,
oh,
I usually message them. I don't always get the right response that I expect, but they will go, oh, well, I know that already. I'm not worried about that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But you should be aware what you're showing to people and what you're putting out there. And, it's sometimes it's fine. Sometimes there's never an issue, but there is still that slim chance, like with cyber stalkers or with just people wanting to get up to nefarious things, which happens
yes.
a lot in our digital space because it gives them that environment where they feel protected and there's no consequences.
The
The
yeah, there's no
it is getting better, but
there's no emotional consequence. So
yes,
something that we found recently is that, well, there's been studies and stuff for it, but they found that people will be virulent online, but then when they speak to the exact same person who's saying the exact same argument, they are civil and welcoming. So that that
yep,
personality between the two people actually negates a lot of hostility. And I think that whenever it comes to informational silos and stuff like that, it's dangerous in itself. Um, but yeah, it's there's so much to talk about with this. What are some key things? Because there's one that comes to mind straight away for me is never do a house tour. Do not show people the unique elements of the inside of your house. Because there's ways to find the mapping of the house through council records, and then locate the house through that. So if you've got an archway in the lounge room, or if you've got like extra bathrooms or something like that, or if your window faces a train track, if you're in a flight path for airplanes and you've got timestamps on stuff, then people can find you through these means, which, as a detective writer, is very fascinating, but terrifying when it's in practical use. So what other steps would you suggest authors in particular take to keep themselves safe online?
I think there's probably a couple of things. I think one of them is particularly around the label things. Just check things before you post them to see if there's those labels, those things in the background.
Yeah, no postal addresses, no full
None of
names.
that. Yeah. When you're doing a lot of your sharing and your about your events and things like that, make sure there's somewhere other than your home. Don't do a lot of that stuff in your own home. I think that's much safer.
Yep.
And when you're posting about birthdays and things like that, stop. If you don't really need to do it, keep it in a closer group. Just share the things that are related to whatever you're doing with your books and things like that, or music if that's what you're doing, and just control, I guess, to a point of what you're sharing and why you're sharing it. Just have that self conversation in your head. Like, just sit there and think, do I really need to share this with everybody on that sort of public forum? Yes,
Yeah.
great. Birthdays are lovely. Everyone wants to share, but you will not find my real date of birth on any of social media. It's not there. You'll never find it.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that easily makes it for malicious actors, or you know anyone that's up to something nefarious really can find that information, particularly around, say, you know you've gone to, say, friends' birthdays parties, or you're frequent a particular restaurant all the time, or showing you've got a nice new car, you don't cover the number plates, they know what the color of the car is, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yes, we all want to share things, but it's around just being conscious of what you're sharing, and just getting to the point where you go, hey, maybe I'm sharing a bit too much now, maybe I want to reel it in a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's being calculated, I think, is probably the thing. Is don't just share everything. you know
Yes. Yeah. Um,
Oversharing definitely is a problem, but
there's when you do any kind of marketing, there's typically 5 pillars of what you share online. It keeps your marketing more concise and more effective, so you're not just shotgunning everything with a big scatter shot across the world. And so choosing which of those 5 pillars has personal details in it, and looking at seeing how valid that actually is. Um, I myself have a very public face. I was the organizer for the Writers' Festival for 3 years, and I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce. So I I have a very public face as it is, and I understand what the risks are around that. Like I said, I've had 3 stalkers, and I've had an array of people send me things kind of out of the blue, which is a little bit surprising. But I also have security measures in place to make sure that I am gauging what happens at the other end of that risk. Um, but a lot of people don't, and a lot of people they don't understand. And I think this is part of the reason that dystopia fell out as a genre, which leads me back into cyberpunk, because cyberpunk, as far as I'm concerned, anything punk is the original dystopia. Um, so people don't realize what these things actually feel like until they've happened. And then by sharing those stories, you get this morbid curiosity, like watching a serial killer documentary or something like that, or reading the Hannibal Lecter series, but you don't understand it fully until these things happen. So I feel like when it comes into cyberpunk, especially, how do you find you're right in the thick of it as a cybersecurity officer? So how do you find that you are able to convey those messages through your books with your second series?
I think, and I deliberately do it because of my cybersecurity background. I sort of entwine some lessons about using multi-factor authentication and
Oh,
breaking Google
yeah.
devices and things like that, and sort of drop a few of those sort of cyber hints. But
That is so
the
basic, by the way, when people
it
don't
is
have two-factor authentication, and it's so set up. It is so set up. And
a couple of tick boxes, nice and simple,
I
really easy.
I
Yep.
I get about 4 messages a day. I change my passwords like once a month now because I get about 4 messages a day from people trying to hack into my accounts, and the reason they can't do it is because of the two-factor authentication. They just can't
Yep.
do it.
Yep. And it's so simple, right? Like it's a couple of switches. Yes, nearly everyone has a smartphone, and
Mm-hmm.
and I always find it funny because in my day job in the cybersecurity side, you still have a conversation with probably about 50% of people still don't use MFA. And
Oh,
MFA is not perfect, but it is a hell of a lot better than not having it. Like
so,
it's just one simple extra step that you can have, just a message to your phone, use
yeah.
the authentication app, and particularly around that social media, there's so
Mm-hmm.
many accounts being hacked these days, particularly around writers and authors and everything else. Like
Yep.
their accounts are being taken over, they're spamming people.
There's,
MFA can stop a lot of that. Like
we
it's
we're gonna
pretty
branch
easy to
off.
do, but
We're going to
but yeah,
branch off
the
because I've got two things I really want to bring up. One, multi-factor authentication is like having security systems around your home that are very obvious. Thieves will go for the house that has low fences out the front or no fences out the front, no big dogs, and the door is wide open. That's what
yes,
your social media account is that's what your accounts are like when you don't have multi-factor authentication. So if you just put that on, you lock your front door. That's it. Just basic. And then you just made me think of, oh, no, I think it's gone. That's all right. It'll come back if it's important. Carry on. Tell us
but
about
you're right though.
cyberpunk.
But yeah, the cyberpunk, I think a little bit easier for myself because of my background in that sort of ethical hacking space. I kind of know in my sort of pen testing experience and you know how to break systems and how to get in and how to do some of the nefarious stuff. So the technical side was, I guess you would say, fairly simple for me because I already
Mm-hmm.
understood. Obviously, I did a bit of research and used a bit of Hollywood flair and made it a little bit more entertaining on a few sides. But I wanted to be a little bit different though and ground it in reality, so make it is something that I really probably could do.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll find that who anyone is sort of a little technical orientated, you'll sit and go, oh, that's actually realistic, and you could really do that. Yes, with a bit more fun and obviously a little bit easier than you would do it in real life, but still based in that sort of reality. But yeah, it's sort of the I'll actually tell you the story a little bit of why I actually wrote Foresight, which will probably give you a bit more insight. I'm a regular contributor to Women in Security magazine, so
Oh,
I do a regular
beautiful.
column sharing sort of my knowledge and things like that. And I was sort of sitting there thinking, talking to the editor and just general conversations, going, how could I help encourage more young teenage girls a bit of an interest in STEM and a bit of cybersecurity? And I'm like, why not try and write a book that has a bit of a lead female character, their sort of age group, something they could relate to? And I sort of went, okay, I'll give it a go. I'd only ever done sort of cyber education, cyber awareness before that, and I was like, not sure if I can do it, but I'll give it a good go. And that's where Foresight was kind of born, in that sort of, I guess, aim for me to try and get a bit more interest for the teenage girls, because literally in cybersecurity in Australia we have roughly about 17% female participation, which is horrible, right?
That's so low.
That's pretty low. I think worldwide, I think we're around 23 to 25, but even that's still
That
pretty horrible. But
that's kind of baffling though, because okay,
we got
women
down another rabbit hole here, but yes.
women make the best stalker slash investigators that I've ever seen.
Agreed.
Honestly, they're able to ascertain from a cheap piece of Kmart clothing where someone is like partying that evening. Like
Yep.
it's
It's putting
absolutely
those links together, the
incredible.
breadcrumbs, which is
Yeah,
perfect for like incident response or cybersecurity, like all of that makes sense. Like even pen testing. Pen
yeah,
testing, you need to be the kind of person that will grab at threads and sort of want to follow those rabbit holes. It's perfect for the way that a lot of women think. Like it,
yeah,
not being
yeah.
sexist or anything, but that's kind of
Well,
works. Like I
it
think it's great.
we get
But
primed. I think we get primed for that. So from a very
yeah,
young age, we're taught that the tiny details are very significant.
yeah,
And so by being able to utilize that training from like when you're a child, I do find that girls TV shows and girls style games are more intricate than boys. They require more time management. They require more pieces that are juggling. And so women are primed for this. So it's crazy that they're not more. There's
I
not
don't
more of
get
them
it.
in the
But yeah,
cybersecurity space.
yeah, and
They make the best
it's
stalkers. They're the
but yeah,
least
that
threatening.
was kind of the general idea of why I sort of wanted to do it. Just put it together and sort of, it was a little weird initially trying to get my mind around writing that lead sort of female character, but I have five sisters, so I it kind of gave me a little bit of personal insight. So I think I did it reasonably well, and the feedback is awesome. So it's getting that right sort of interest, and then sort of going, they're loving it. So as long as I can get it into as many hands as I can, I think it'll kind of do its job. But yeah,
Beautiful.
it's my weird, unique way of trying to help with the diversity. And I'm very big on that, not just male and female, but, you know, pen testers on the spectrum are some of the most amazing pen testers I've ever seen. They just see the details different, they
Mm,
approach things different. And I just think the more different viewpoints we can get in some of those areas, I think the better we'll be. And because at the moment, I'll openly admit, I think cybersecurity, we're not really succeeding. I think we're losing more than we're winning. I think
mm.
we're trying really hard and we're improving, but yeah, we're a long way from, not seeing a lot of those, Medibank and, some
Oh,
of those
yeah,
other very large, horrible little sort of breaches that are happening. But yeah, and
yeah,
we'll see them weekly for a long time. And I think until we find some new ways to see things and new ways to look at things. So yeah, hopefully my
yeah.
work helps that a little bit, but it's all a work in progress. But
I think that's something as well. I find that Logan creatives and Australian creatives are more creative. They go that little extra mile, or they're able to freeform the dots together in ways that I've used to work on cruise ships, so I traveled to a whole bunch of countries, and the mysticism around the Australian creative was quite baffling to me, because I'm just used to it. Like I'm used to people thinking outside of the box, but Australia could definitely be the forefront of cybersecurity through our creative sectors. It's about, for me, I look at it, I'm like, well, the reason we're behind is because we're just trying to patch the holes in the ship as we're sailing through. Whereas if we were thinking ahead about how we were about to be hit, we would be able to predetermine that. Ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. So being able to think ahead of how criminals and how hackers try to get through would help prevent them from getting through. Um, but yeah, it's a really tricky sphere to be in, because it's constantly trying to outdig someone else in a different trench, sort of thing.
it is
Um,
very much.
yeah, and you can't see where they're at or what they're doing. Those details are held down tight. Um, but it's
And they
so
say that's a bit of a common thing, like particularly in security, a common saying is that we need to get a million things right, and the bad guys or girls only need to get one thing right
yeah,
to break in. So it's
yeah,
yeah, it's definitely, you're up against a bit of an avalanche, but you're right, it's we are very much more reactive
yeah.
than we are proactive, and I think we need to be more proactive. And a lot of the time, MFA, they're still not doing MFA, and they're still not doing
Basic
their
stuff.
basics right with doing backups and getting all that updates. Because a lot of, I think there was some statistics last year, I think it was about 70 or 80% of breaches were actually caused by things that already had security updates, patches released, they just hadn't been put on the systems.
Oh
So if a lot of
no.
that stuff, like doing that foundation,
Oh,
yes, there's some things that are old and you can't really touch them, or they'll fall over, so they don't do patching and stuff, but there's some counter protections you could put on that sort of stuff to compensate. So, but yeah, it's really sad when you hear those statistics that, more than 70 or 80% of those could have actually been stopped just with an update.
Stop ignoring it, saying that there's an update that needs to happen.
Yep.
So
They released them for a reason. Yes, they're
oh,
annoying, and no one wants to have to do them, but we should.
it would be nice if they said something about it. I feel like a lot of the time people don't. I refuse to update my phone often, just because I'm like, I don't want to have to go through the whole restart the phone, let it start back up, and then there's more bugs in it. Like then more things break.
Because you fix one and make another one.
Yeah.
It's fairly consistent.
Yeah. Even just a little pop-up now to say this is for closing these security breaches would be really good.
People would be more willing, right?
Yeah, it would add
the reasons, but
it would add urgency to it.
Yeah, we've become a bit too reliant on our digital devices. So we're sitting there going, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to pain. What if it doesn't work when I come back on? And so it's give them the reasons and tell them why. And I think that's the problem with a lot of the education wise, that a lot of people use the scare tactic side of things, but I'm like, give the reasons why it's a good thing to do this. What's the benefit to the individual of doing those updates, or, checking where email's from and make sure it's the real person and not a random address that's not even the right company.
Yeah.
But if you don't tell them that it could cost them money from their bank account, or it's going to, take their computers down, they're not going to know. They're just going to go, oh, you just want me to do something annoying. You're going to stop me from doing my job. But it's a lot of work to do in my industry, I think. And
you just reminded
we're working on it.
you just reminded me of the thing that I lost earlier. So picture this, right? All authors are told, build your email list. Build your social media and funnel it into your email list. Your email list is gold. That's the only thing you own. I had a friend 2 years ago, I believe it was, and she had spent 5 or 6 years building these lists. She spent all of this time and dedication. She had such a loyal following, and then she didn't have these security practices in place. So she had all of these names, all of these emails, phone numbers, postal addresses. She had relationship management systems between like the people that were on her list and if their kids had special birthdays and all of this data. She had it on Facebook, she had email lists, and she had it on a couple of other social media platforms, but she used the same password for all of them.
Yeah.
She used the same email for all of them, which is standard, but she used the same password for all of them. And she did not have multi-factor authentication. So 6 years of building everything up. She had like nearly 10,000 people across all of it. And she was on the verge of writing full-time. And then this French underwear company hacked her account, changed they didn't even just hack it and steal the data. They hacked it. They changed the title of everything. They changed who the who the boss email was on each account. She lost everything, and now all of her previous clients and all of her previous customers and readers are all suffering from getting these French underwear spam ads.
It's definitely that password thing is sadly too common. It happens quite a lot where they reuse the same stuff, and get a password manager. It's nice and easy. You can have a really long password for your password manager, like LastPass or Securo. I think there's a few of them, but basically, don't use the same one. Can cause quite a lot of trouble, particularly around that sort of, the amount of time and building that up and then just losing it, or them all being scammed and spammed from that list, because now they have all of those contacts, whether she got the access back to that.
No.
They would still probably pulled all the contacts anyway, so they still would have had them. But
because it's social media, so her email list, because they changed the email over, that's all just spam now. So they can't do much with the email list.
That's painful.
But she had to go into her website and make sure the website wasn't sending new leads to the same email list anymore. But all of her social media, you would think, you just, you call up or you email Facebook and you say, my account's been hacked, can you get back? No. nothing got fixed. Not a single thing got fixed. So like years of your heart and soul and relationship building, most of those people will never see you again.
And that's really horrible, particularly when you're talking like 10,000 people on the list or
Yeah.
something like that. So much hard work and so much effort to get it, and then just gone like
Yep.
that. And it's simple as a password. And the worst thing is, like, a lot of those sort of passwords come from like the big Facebook or LinkedIn or one of those accounts where sort of platforms are breached.
Yep.
They pull the database out if you're using the same one on anything else, and they will look, because they do.
Yep.
And then they've automatically got all your other accounts as well, and it's just an avalanche effect, and it
It,
happens
it's so
too much.
dirty.
But
So
yeah,
if anyone needs a warning, yeah. Oh,
that's a good one. Yes,
yeah.
definitely a good warning. A
Yes.
hard lesson to learn, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming she's much better with the MFA and passwords now.
Everything is locked down like a turtle's butt now.
Yeah,
Um,
usually is after that kind of thing. So,
yes.
which
Yeah.
never a nice way to learn, but you do. It's definitely a lesson learned. So
Yeah. But yeah, that was 2 years ago. And thankfully, the thing that they can't steal are the skills that it takes to build that back up. So she's building it up very quickly now. But the damage wrought, has set her back 6 years. So
it would, and
it
because some of those people that were on that list probably won't come back onto a new one now because of what's happened before, and it
exactly.
hurts her reputation as much as the horrible French underwear is
Yeah.
probably not something that they really want. But
It was honestly, it was so random, that it was a French underwear company. And then they started to sell like just random apparel as well. But I just remember looking at it, I'm like, you've gone from, being an author, a romance author, to a French underwear company, and it's not sexy underwear either. It was like sportswear underwear. So just bizarre, cruel. Make sure you've got the multi-factor authentication, everyone, and make sure that you have your passwords just handled. Change them regularly as well. That you need to make sure that they are changing it up.
it's good advice. I
Oh.
definitely concur with that.
Alrighty. Now, I want to know about a hacker, and I am a hacker.
A hacker I am.
A hacker I am. I'm
Yeah.
looking at it and I'm like, okay,
There's
it's
a
in
story
capitals.
behind why the name as well. I have a
It's a
I'll tell
good
you the
title.
story
I love
first.
it. Tell me.
It's I've always had, with a bit of an ethical hacking background and pen testing background myself. That's kind of where I started in the sort of security game before I moved into more of a leadership role. But I always had a bit of an issue with the depiction of what a hacker looks like, with the whole hacker in the hoodie in the dark room, and the gloves, and just the whole matrix code down the sort of the screen look. It always irked me, and I'm like, that's not what hackers look like. That's not what they look like. You or me. They you could be sitting next to someone on the train, and you would never know that's who they were, and that's what they did. So I've always sort of irked against that whole statement, which is the reason I sort of pushed myself out there as a pen tester. Called a hacker I am was just a bit of a chapter I wrote about kind of making a very big joke out of that whole depiction of a hacker in a hoodie, and the gloves, and how can you type with those kind of gloves on in the sort of the background. So I really poked fun at it, and that's where the name come from. It was like, I'm going to really have a bit of fun with this. And yeah, so I pull it all apart and tell people what hackers really look like. And they could be a person with a suit on, they can be sports clothes, it doesn't matter, they can look like anything, because you don't really know. So yeah, don't stick to that weird, media stereotype that they like to use. But yeah, so that's not what we all look like. So
they're just randomly pressing buttons on a keyboard as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden I'm in.
yeah. I loved what they're typing, because they're literally just smashing keys, and you're like going, and what they usually got on the screen is someone doing an update of some software on their screen or something. If you know what the code is, and you're like going,
Oh,
nothing.
it
But yeah, so
makes me
the
think of
Hacker
the
I
start
Am
of
book.
Sims.
Yeah. So yeah, the book, I guess, it kind of started, I guess, sort of from my sort of where my writing journey started, probably about 6 years ago. I was never really a big writer. I never even contemplated doing it, but I went to a cybersecurity conference down in Canberra, and I worked for a managed service provider, so an MSP at the time, and I was like, no one's really talking about how big of a risk they are, how
Yep.
they hold all the keys to all the computers for all these different organizations. And I'm like, someone's got to say something. They were just talking about governments and their risk and that sort of stuff. So I pitched an article to CSO Online, the Cybersecurity Online magazine, I think it was 6 years, maybe 7 years ago now. And I pitched an article about that, just wanting to explain it. And they said, love the idea, pitch something and sort of see where it went. So that was the first of, I think, about 200 articles I wrote over about an
Wow.
18-month time frame.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was huge. Like it just
That's
started this whole thing.
massive.
Yeah. But it was sort of probably about 20 or 30 articles in. A few of my colleagues are like, these are really cool. Why don't you write a sort of a book that in this sort of similar style, using stories and make it a bit more fun and use the cyber education with that kind of scenario in mind? And I'm like, I can give it a try. So 50 topics in, and a Hacker Aim was born. And I went with the first two. I actually self-published the first two A Hacker Aim ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that because when I approached a few publishers, they wanted to make it like every other cybersecurity book, which is usually dry and boring and very, very
No one's
structured.
ever going
But
to pick it up except for
no,
people in cybersecurity.
yes, which defeats the purpose of having a kind of a cyber education, cyber journey kind of book, really. So I went, I'll put it together myself. So literally, you can choose. In my first book, there's like 50 topics. You can literally pick up any one you want and read that standalone from any of the others and learn something about a topic you want, and then go find out a bit more information if you like. But
Oh, very
it's
cool.
very, very different to a normal cybersecurity book, which is a good thing. I think it's a bit more fun, a bit more entertaining. But yeah, that's literally where that sort of series started, and people loved it. So I did a second one, and then moved on to sort of that into the cyberpunk sort of series as a bit of the next sort of aim. But yeah, I think potentially there could be a three at some point, but maybe because it's kind of got that foundation of readership now, I could probably encourage my publisher to stick to that sort of similar format, which is good because I have that bit of a following on it now. So I think yeah, it's all around that sort of fun cyber education, and I wanted to kind of use it as a bit of a way to show the lessons that I learnt when I was coming into cybersecurity and the things that stopped me and the mistakes I made. So some of the young grads quite like it as they're coming into the industry, sort of learning my mistakes and going, oh, maybe I won't do it that way, or maybe this makes sense, and sort of use my journey, which is another of that whole struggle of what to share and what not to share
Yeah.
kind of scenario. But yeah, I think it was more about that whole helping others not make those mistakes and that education. But yeah, I have to say I've definitely got the bug now. I kind of can't stop writing, but yeah, I write for about 5 magazines now as well. So
Oh, fantastic.
I do too much in the writing space, but, but is there such a thing as too much, right?
I think once you've got the calling, you can't
You just keep
deny it.
going.
You can't turn it
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
You just have to
yeah,
keep doing it.
yeah. I'm with
Oh,
you. I agree. But yeah, that's kind of where it started, and yeah, sort of it's been well received. It's probably not as polished as my sort of foresight in the newer series, but being self-published, they're never perfect. But yeah, I think as an author, though, I think, and a writer, I think I've grown a lot, which is good. Feels good for myself. I think my skills have improved, and I'm definitely a lot better than I was, I think, initially. So it's been an interesting 5 or 6 years, definitely, and hopefully another 50 or so writing, which would be nice. But
oh, wonderful. Well, I'm excited to have you at the Logan Writers Festival this year because this is such a good topic for every student who will be attending on the Friday to come and see, because it'll keep schools safe, it'll keep our kids safe, and I'm hoping that this kicks off the next generation being far more mindful with the technology that they're utilizing. So thank you so much, Craig. Where can people find more of you?
the easiest way is probably my author site. So it's craigfordauthor.com.
Beautiful.
You'll be able to follow any of my books or my blogs, and I usually share my articles and everything else. So it's probably the easiest place. You'll find me on all the usual socials, Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn as well. But yeah, pretty easy to find, which is really strange for a cybersecurity professional, but we won't go any further down that rabbit hole. But yes, easy to find.
Beautiful. So make sure you check out Craig's stuff, and we will see you on the 9th and 10th of June. June? I'm sure it's June.
Yes,
June.
June. Yes, yes. Very excited. It's going to be really fun.
It's not even that early. I've got no excuse. It's just that I haven't had a coffee.
Yeah, that helps.
So 9th and 10th of June this year, it's going to be at the Logan West Community Centre, and it's going to be indoors. We are upgrading this year. I am so excited for what's happening with the Writers Festival, and we will see you then and there. take it easy and make sure that you keep reading.